The first thing he noticed when the guards shoved him into the throne chamber was the echo. Not the echo of his own boots, he wasn't wearing any, because someone had decided a prisoner didn't need footwear, but the echo of his own heartbeat in his ears. The chamber seemed designed to amplify dread. Black columns of some alien alloy rose like petrified trees, veins of light pulsing faintly within them, as though the palace itself was alive and listening. He wanted to whistle, partly to calm himself, partly just to see how ridiculous the sound would bounce around in here. But whistling seemed like the kind of thing that got you immediately stabbed by a ceremonial spear, and he already had enough problems. And then there she was. She sat on a throne that wasn't so much a seat as it was an act of intimidation sculpted into furniture. Spines of metal flared behind her like wings, and faint holograms shimmered above her head. Alien script scrolling and shifting, recording who knew what imperial decrees. She was tall even sitting down, her posture coiled with the kind of confidence that came from years of winning arguments without words. Long hair, dark as void space, framed her face, and her ears, slender and elongated like the tips of a bow, peeked through as if to remind everyone she was not of Earth, not of humankind. The air around her carried a hum, like static from a storm. She regarded him with eyes that seemed equal parts curiosity and disdain, like someone had dragged in a street magician to perform at a funeral. Her voice, when it came, echoed less from the chamber than from some careful control of tone, the sound precise enough to cut glass. "You," she said, "stand accused of trespass, arrogance, and offending my court by existing in its presence. Tradition demands you either meet me in combat, or submit yourself to something else." There was a pause, deliberate and heavy. "Love," she added, and the way the word curved off her tongue made the guards shift uncomfortably, as though even hearing their sovereign speak it was too much. He blinked. Once. Twice. 3 times, because apparently that was his body's only defense mechanism when confronted with execution by vocabulary. He cleared his throat, which came out more like a squeak. "Between combat and love, I feel like I should ask, what's the insurance plan on either option?" The guards bristled. One even raised a spear. The human raised both hands, palms out, as if to prove he was unarmed and also in possession of very little common sense. "Listen, I'm not saying I wouldn't make an excellent dueling opponent, but," he looked down at his own scrawny arms, then up at the towering alien soldiers flanking the chamber. "I bruise just thinking about exercise. You don't want that on your polished floor. Blood stains. Very embarrassing for me, very inconvenient for your cleaning staff." The Empress's gaze did not waver, but the corner of her lips quivered almost imperceptibly. "Almost. And love?" she pressed. He hesitated, then shrugged. "Honestly, that sounds slightly less likely to kill me. Statistically speaking. Unless you're a really bad kisser. In which case." The chamber went so silent he could hear the hum of the holographic projections. Then, like a comet cracking the sky, the Empress laughed. Once. Sharp, sudden, and shocking enough that the guards nearly dropped their spears. It was not a delicate laugh, it was a sound that rolled and echoed, half snarl and half delight, as though she couldn't decide whether to punish him or applaud him. "Very well," she said at last, and her voice carried a dangerous amusement. "You choose love." "I mean, I choose not to die," he clarified quickly, "but yes, if we're branding it, sure. Love." The Empress rose from her throne, and the guard stepped back automatically. She descended the steps with a grace that wasn't human, every movement measured, her long ears catching the light like silver crescents. When she stopped in front of him, the air itself seemed to lean in. "You will remain in my palace," she declared. "You will walk beside me. You will learn what it means to love an empress whose heart has only ever known battle. Fail me, and you will discover combat after all." He nodded quickly, then slowly, trying not to look like a bobblehead doll on trial. "Right. Palace. Walk beside you. Love." "Noted. I am excellent at companionship. Very supportive. Ask anyone. Except my exes. Don't ask them. Her eyes narrowed, but the faintest ghost of amusement remained. With a gesture, she dismissed the guards. They obeyed reluctantly, shooting him looks that suggested they were already placing bets on how long he'd last before being incinerated. When the chamber was empty except for the two of them, he risked a grin. So, dinner first? The Empress tilted her head, considering him like one might consider an oddly shaped artifact dug up from a ruin. And then she turned away, her hair sweeping behind her like a shadow, and strode toward the exit. Follow, she commanded. He did, though he muttered under his breath, well, that's one way to get a date. The corridors of the palace were no less intimidating than the throne room. Walls pulsed faintly with lines of living circuitry, casting dim light that shifted color as if breathing. Occasionally, alien glyphs scrolled across them, responding to the Empress's presence. He tried to keep up with her stride, which was several degrees faster than his natural pace, resulting in what could only be described as a desperate shuffle jog. Your palace is very shiny, he offered, his voice echoing down the corridor. Do you ever bump into walls? Because if I lived here, I'd constantly walk into things just to watch them light up. She ignored him. Or maybe that was her version of listening. Hard to tell. Eventually they entered a hall that seemed to serve as both dining chamber and armory. Long tables gleamed with embedded energy lines, and racks of weapons adorned the walls like art. Soldiers occupied the far end, eating in perfect, unnerving silence. When the Empress entered, they all rose, fists to chests in salute. She sat at the head of the table. He hesitated, hovering awkwardly until she gestured sharply for him to sit beside her. The soldiers did not sit again until she did, and their eyes lingered on him like predators evaluating unfamiliar prey. The meal was placed before him, something steaming, faintly luminous, and disturbingly gelatinous. He poked it with a utensil that looked more like a surgical instrument. The food quivered. Ah, he said. Finally. Revenge of the Jello. A soldier scowled. The Empress arched an eyebrow. It's delicious, he added quickly, scooping a cautious bite into his mouth. It burned. Not metaphorically. Actually burned, like someone had liquefied a plasma torch and decided it was soup. He choked, grabbed a cup, and downed its contents before realizing the liquid was some kind of fermented acid. His eyes watered. His throat screamed. He gave a thumbs up. Perfect. I love it. Really cleans the sinuses. And most of my internal organs. The Empress's lips twitched again. The soldiers, however, were less entertained. One leaned forward and muttered something in their language, something sharp, with an edge that didn't require translation. The Empress silenced him with a glance. Then she leaned just slightly toward her new human companion. You will survive, she murmured. Not quite a promise. Not quite a threat. Something between the two. He swallowed another bite of lava jelly, smiled weakly, and whispered back, define, survive. Her laugh was softer this time, but it carried across the hall nonetheless. And for the first time in what felt like centuries, her soldiers shifted uncomfortably, not because of fear, but because their Empress was laughing, and they didn't know what that meant. And as he coughed, wheezed, and made another desperate attempt to eat without combusting, he thought, maybe, just maybe, choosing love hadn't been the worst idea after all. He woke to the sound of horns. Not the noble kind that signaled royal processions or galactic parades, but the kind that sounded like someone had strapped a foghorn to a starship engine and let it scream directly into his skull. He sat up on the pallet they'd assigned him. Calling it a bed would have been an act of generosity, since it was more like a plank with ambitions, and found himself in a room that was part barracks, part shrine. The walls pulsed faintly with runes, and faint streams of energy coursed through veins in the floor. His head throbbed in time with the glow. The horn sounded again, rattling his ribs. He staggered upright, muttering, "Either that's breakfast, or we're being invaded. Honestly, I hope it's invasion. Breakfast here is deadly." The door opened without ceremony, and in stepped one of the palace guards, a man built like someone had taken a refrigerator and taught it to scowl. His armor glowed faintly, etched with flowing patterns that seemed more biological than manufactured. His long ears twitched with irritation. "Rise," the guard barked. "Oh, I did," the human said, rubbing his eyes. "I just wish I hadn't. Do you people always start the day with war crimes against eardrums?" The guard didn't laugh. He gestured, and two more soldiers appeared to flank him. They marched the human through the labyrinth of corridors until they emerged into a courtyard so vast it might as well have been its own ecosystem. Towering structures curved overhead, part architecture, part living organism, massive vines intertwined with metallic spires, supporting platforms where soldiers trained in perfect synchrony. The Empress stood at the center, her presence commanding even amid the chaos. She was dressed not in regal robes but in armor that glimmered like forged starlight, elegant and lethal at once. When she raised her hand, the entire courtyard froze. Every soldier, every drone, every flicker of training firepower halted as though someone had pressed pause on reality itself. Her gaze found him instantly. "Today," she announced, her voice echoing across the courtyard, "my companion will learn the rites of strength. If he is to walk beside me, he will understand the heart of our people." The human blinked. "Quick question, when you say, rites of strength, do you mean, like, yoga? Please let it be yoga." The soldiers muttered among themselves, some openly smirking. The Empress's lips curved faintly. "Begin," she commanded. What followed could only be described as ritualized torture disguised as exercise. The soldiers moved with flawless precision through sequences of combat drills, each one involving weapons that looked far too sharp for casual practice. Energy spears whirled, blades sang, and plasma bolts cracked across the air. He, meanwhile, was handed a staff taller than himself, its surface humming faintly with embedded circuits. The guard demonstrated a spin so graceful it seemed like dance. He tried to mimic it, only for the staff to yank itself free of his grip and send him spinning instead. He landed flat on his back with a wheeze. The courtyard erupted in laughter, not cruel, exactly, but incredulous. The Empress raised her hand, silencing them, though the amusement in her eyes betrayed her. He groaned, pushing himself up. "See? That was strategy. I was distracting the weapon so it wouldn't know my next move." The staff twitched faintly in his hand, as though mocking him. They tried again. And again. Each attempt ended with some new humiliation, tripping over his own feet, colliding with a practice drone that beeped in offended tones, accidentally flinging the staff into a fountain that hissed with alien energy. The soldiers began openly betting on how many minutes he would last before giving up. But he didn't. Every time he fell, he stood again, muttering under his breath, cracking jokes through bruised ribs, grinning even when the weapon scorched his palms. His stubbornness was absurd, ridiculous, almost insulting to the seriousness of the training. Yet by the end of the session, when he finally managed a single clean spin without hitting himself in the face, the courtyard gave a small, reluctant cheer. He bent over, panting, sweat dripping into his eyes. "Ha! Victory! Someone get me a medal. Or a sandwich. Actually, just the sandwich." The Empress approached, her armor gleaming. She studied him for a long moment, then inclined her head just slightly. Not approval, not yet, but acknowledgement. "You endured," she said. "Endured? I call that thriving," he wheezed. "Well, barely thriving. Fine, technically I call that not dying. But progress." Her lips twitched again. Then, without warning, she raised her own staff, spinning it in a blur of light and sound that left the soldiers awestruck. She extended it toward him, the challenge unspoken. He stared at it, then at her. "Wait. You mean, right now?" You want me to spar with you? I just graduated from hitting myself slightly less. The soldiers leaned forward, hungry for spectacle. The Empress smirked. Do not fear. I will not break you. Comforting, he muttered, gripping his staff with both hands like a man holding onto the last safety railing on a collapsing starship. The spar lasted all of 6 seconds. She swept his staff aside, spun around him in a blur of motion, and tapped the back of his neck with the tip of her weapon. He froze, eyes wide, then raised a finger. Okay. Important note, that was unfair. You've had years of practice. I've had 5 minutes, and half of that was spent unconscious. She lowered the staff, eyes gleaming with amusement. Again. And so it went. Again and again, he fell. Again and again, he stood. By the end, he was bruised, limping, and covered in dust, but still cracking jokes. The soldiers, who had begun the day sneering, now watched with something like reluctant respect. When the session ended, the Empress dismissed her warriors. The courtyard emptied until only the 2 of them remained beneath the alien sky. She regarded him in silence for a long moment, her long ears catching the faint light. You persist, she said softly. He shrugged, wincing. It's either that or get stabbed. Honestly, it's less about bravery and more about not wanting to be floor decoration. She laughed, quiet this time, almost reluctant, as though she hadn't meant for it to escape. The sound startled him more than the sparring had. Come, she said, turning toward the palace. There is more you must see. He limped after her, muttering, please let it be a nap. Please let it be a nap. Instead, she led him into the deeper chambers of the palace, where walls of living circuitry pulsed brighter, and strange machines hummed with dormant power. She stopped before a chamber sealed by interlocking glyphs, pressing her palm to the surface. The door split open with a sigh, revealing a cavernous hall filled with stasis pods. Each pod contained a warrior, suspended in luminous gel, their forms glowing faintly. This is the heart of our strength, she said. The warriors of past campaigns, preserved in honor. Should our empire ever falter, they will awaken to fight again. He stared, wide-eyed. So, basically, you have an army in the fridge. She gave him a look sharp enough to cut steel. He coughed. I mean, very impressive fridge. Her gaze softened slightly as she looked at the pods. This is our legacy. It is what I inherited. And what I must decide to preserve, or to change. For once, he didn't joke. He looked at the rows of sleeping warriors and then back at her. Maybe, he said quietly, you don't need them to wake up. Maybe what you need is for the living to laugh again. She studied him, her expression unreadable. Then she turned away, her armor whispering softly with the movement. Tomorrow, she said, you will join me at council. You will speak before my generals. His stomach dropped. Wait, me? In front of your generals? Are you trying to get me vaporized? Her smile was small but unmistakable. If you survive them, perhaps you will survive me. And with that, she walked away, leaving him alone in a hall of sleeping soldiers, wondering how exactly he had gone from potential prisoner to court jester, sparring dummy, and now, unbelievably, a guest at an alien war council. He sighed, rubbed his aching ribs, and muttered, next time someone offers me a choice between battle and love, I'm asking for a third option, pizza. The council chamber looked like the inside of a starship engine, circular, vast, humming with restrained power. The floor was etched with glowing lines that pulsed like veins, and the walls curved upward into a dome of shifting light that mapped the Empire's territories across the stars. Holographic planets spun lazily overhead, accompanied by streams of data that shifted and rearranged as if alive. At the center of it all, the Empress stood tall, her presence bending the room around her like gravity. To her left and right, the generals of her court assembled, warriors clad in armor so intricate it seemed grown rather than forged, each bearing scars like trophies. Their long ears marked them as kin to her, though none carried the same poise. And then there was him. The human, seated at the Empress's side in a chair that was obviously too large for him, dangling his legs like a child on a stool. He had tried to sit with dignity, but the seat kept adjusting its height automatically, mistaking him for a different species entirely. Every few seconds it shifted, and he'd drop half an inch with a squeak. "Please," he muttered, fiddling with the controls, "I beg you, just pick a setting and commit. This is not the time for musical chairs." The nearest general glared at him as if trying to set him on fire with her eyes. It almost worked. The Empress raised a hand, silencing the chamber. "Generals. You have heard the rumors. You have seen the defiance of my choice. This human, whom I did not slay, sits beside me. Today, he speaks." Every head turned toward him. The weight of centuries of tradition pressed down like a collapsing star. He swallowed hard. "Right," he said, forcing a grin. "So, hi. I'm the human. You may remember me from such spectacular failures as dropping the training staff into the fountain and accidentally insulting your food by surviving it." Silence. Stares. Someone coughed. "Okay, tough crowd," he muttered. Then, louder, "Look, I know you all expected me to be dead by now. Honestly, I did too. Yet here I am. And, well, here's the thing. I know you all live and breathe combat. I've seen it. I've been used as a practice target for it. Very effective system. 10 out of 10, would not recommend to anyone with bones. But maybe, just maybe, strength doesn't always have to mean swinging sharp objects until someone falls over." A ripple of outrage surged through the chamber. One general slammed a fist against the table. "You dare tell us the meaning of strength? You, who cannot even lift a glaive without dropping it." "Yes," he said brightly, "because I'm excellent at dropping things. I've had years of practice. But hear me out. Where I come from, strength also means, well, surviving. Helping others survive. Finding ways to win without burning everything down in the process. I mean, sure, fighting works, but so does, I don't know, cooking a decent meal that doesn't spontaneously combust. That's victory, too." Another general growled, "This is an insult." "Not at all," he said, raising a hand. "If anything, it's a compliment. You're already great at fighting. Amazing, in fact. If you had a Galactic Yelp page, I'd give you 5 stars for intimidation. But maybe it's time to add something else to your resume. Something that doesn't involve me bleeding." The room boiled with fury. Several generals stood, fists slamming the table. The holograms flickered with their agitation, stars flaring and shrinking. But amid the storm of voices, the Empress watched him quietly, her long ears tilting ever so slightly, her lips unreadable. Finally, she raised her hand. Silence fell instantly. "Enough," she commanded. The generals froze. She turned to him. "You dare to speak of strength as laughter? As survival without combat?" He hesitated. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes. Because if everything is battle, then you're never really living. You're just waiting to fall. But when you laugh, when you forgive, when you find a way to keep someone else standing beside you instead of burying them under you, that's strength too. And sometimes, it's harder than swinging a sword." A long pause stretched across the chamber. The generals shifted uneasily. And then, from somewhere in the back, a laugh. A real laugh, deep, sudden, unrestrained. A soldier stationed at the door tried to cover his mouth, but it was too late. The sound echoed across the chamber. Everyone turned. The soldier froze under their gaze, then stammered, forgive me, Empress, I could not help it. His words. The Empress narrowed her eyes. The soldier flinched. But then, astonishingly, she herself let out the faintest chuckle. A sound like breaking glass in a silent cathedral. The chamber rippled with shock. Generals stared. No one could remember the last time their Empress had laughed in council. The human leaned back in his ever-shifting chair, grinning weakly. Well, good to know I can still bomb at comedy and accidentally start a revolution. The meeting did not end in applause. It ended in silence, heavy and uncertain, as the Empress dismissed her generals with a gesture. They filed out stiffly, their pride wounded, their certainties cracked. When they were alone, she turned to him. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes burned with something fierce. You, she said softly, are dangerous. Me? He pointed at himself, wide-eyed. No, no, no. I'm not dangerous. I'm the opposite of dangerous. I'm a professional hazard to myself. Honestly, I need bubble wrap just to survive daily life. Her lips twitched. And yet you have done what none have managed. You made them question. You made them laugh. He shrugged, trying to mask the tremor in his hands. I wasn't trying to, you know. Overthrow your empire or anything. I was just trying not to get stabbed. And yet, she murmured, stepping closer, you stab at the heart of tradition with every word. He blinked. That sounds poetic and terrifying at the same time. She leaned in, close enough that he could see the faint shimmer of light in her irises. Do not mistake my amusement for safety. You walk a path more perilous than battle. But, she paused, as though the words cost her. Perhaps it is a path I must see to its end. He swallowed hard. That's nice. I think. Unless the end is me buried in one of those stasis pods. Her laugh, soft, reluctant, escaped again. She turned away, her armor catching the chamber's light. Tomorrow, she said, you will address not only my generals, but my people. If they laugh as you made me laugh, perhaps you will live. If not, then even love will not save you. His jaw dropped. Wait, wait, wait. Your people. As in, all of them. Do I get a microphone? A stage? At least a glass of water. Public speaking is the #1 fear on my planet, death is second. You're basically combining both. She did not answer. She was already striding from the chamber, her long ears glinting like silver crescents. He sat back in his chair, which promptly lowered itself another inch, making him yelp. He groaned, covering his face with his hands. Great. Fantastic. I'm about to do stand-up comedy for an entire empire of warriors. On the bright side, maybe if I fail, at least they'll kill me quickly. Hopefully. Probably. The chair hummed beneath him, adjusting yet again, and he muttered, worst throne ever. He had never seen so many people gathered in one place without someone selling hot dogs. The plaza outside the palace stretched wide enough to land a fleet of carriers, tiered in rings that spiraled upward into balconies carved from living stone. Thousands, no, tens of thousands, of the Empress's people filled the space, their long ears twitching in anticipation, their armor gleaming in the pale light of a sky crowded with moons. Holographic banners unfurled overhead, glowing with imperial insignia, shifting in colors that pulsed like heartbeats. The air hummed, charged not just with energy but expectation. And there he was, standing on a platform that rose slowly, ominously, toward the crowd. He clutched the railing like it was the last rope dangling from a starship hull. His knees trembled, his mouth went dry, and he muttered under his breath. Great. Absolutely great. No pressure. Just the entire future of an empire balancing on whether I can land a punchline. Beside him, the Empress stood calm, regal, utterly composed. The faintest smile touched her lips when she glanced at him. "Remember," she said, her voice low enough for only him to hear. "Make them laugh, or make them bow. Either will suffice." "Oh sure," he whispered back, "easy task. Right after that I'll juggle black holes and teach plasma cannons to play the violin." The platform halted. Silence fell across the crowd like a drawn blade. The Empress raised her hand, her voice ringing out, "Behold! The human who chose love over combat. Today, he speaks not to me, not to my generals, but to you." Every eye turned toward him. Thousands of eyes. Some cold, some curious, some openly hostile. He swallowed, adjusted the collar of the ceremonial robe they'd forced him into, something that felt suspiciously like a tablecloth with delusions of grandeur, and stepped forward. "Hi," he said, his voice echoing, amplified by unseen systems. "So, this is awkward." A ripple passed through the crowd. He pressed on. "Normally, when I meet new people, I start with a handshake. But you guys? You've got spears. And plasma blades. And warships that look like they eat smaller warships for breakfast. So I figured maybe a handshake wasn't the best idea." A murmur of amusement. Small. But real. Encouraged, he spread his hands wide. "Now, I know what you're thinking. Who is this fragile, oddly dressed creature, and why hasn't our Empress cut him in half yet? Believe me, I ask myself the same question daily. Sometimes hourly." Laughter. Actual laughter, scattered but audible. His heart raced. "Here's the thing," he continued, pacing awkwardly across the platform. "Your whole culture is built on strength. Fighting. Winning. Never backing down. And don't get me wrong, it's impressive. I mean, you guys could probably conquer a black hole if you got bored one afternoon. But I've been here a little while, and you know what I've noticed. You're not just strong. You're funny. Oh, you try to hide it, but I've seen the way your soldiers laughed when I tripped over my own staff during training. That wasn't mockery. That was joy. Admit it, you liked watching me fall on my face." This time the laughter was louder, rolling across the plaza like distant thunder. Even some of the stern generals shifted in their seats, lips twitching against their will. "And if you can laugh," he said, voice gaining steadiness, "then you're already stronger than you know. Because laughter means you're alive. It means you're more than just warriors waiting for the next war. It means you can choose something better." The crowd hushed, listening. He took a deep breath. "Look, I'm not here to tell you to throw away your traditions. I'm not suicidal. Okay, fine, maybe a little suicidal for agreeing to this speech. But I am here to say this: love is strength too. Mercy is strength. Lifting someone up instead of knocking them down. That's not weakness. That's power. The kind of power no blade can cut, no warship can outgun. And trust me, I've seen a lot of blades. Mostly swinging at me." A ripple ran through the crowd again. Not laughter this time, but something heavier. Thought. Reflection. And then, because he couldn't resist, "Also, while I have everyone's attention, your food is delicious, but maybe tone down the spice just a notch. My digestive system is filing formal complaints." The plaza erupted in laughter. Actual, roaring laughter that filled the air, bouncing off the stone and banners, rolling like a tide. He staggered back, wide-eyed, then broke into a grin. The Empress stepped forward, her long ears glinting as she raised her hand for silence. The laughter faded into anticipation. "You see," she said, her voice fierce. "He speaks truth. We are strong. But perhaps strength can wear more than one face. Perhaps it can be laughter. Perhaps it can be love." The people stirred, murmuring, uncertain but moved. And then came the test. A general rose from the front ranks, armor gleaming, voice booming. This is madness. An empire cannot be ruled by jokes and tenderness. Empress, he has bewitched you. End this farce before it weakens us. The plaza held its breath. The Empress turned slowly, eyes sharp as blades. Step forward, she commanded. The general obeyed, striding to the platform, towering over the human. He sneered. If this creature is to stand among us, let him prove himself. Not in words. In battle. The crowd roared approval. The human's stomach dropped. He glanced at the Empress, but her expression gave nothing away. Right, he muttered. Of course. Couldn't just end with applause. Had to be a duel. Typical Thursday. The general drew his blade, its edge shimmering with plasma. He leveled it at the human's chest. Defend yourself. He looked around desperately. No weapon. No plan. Just a racing heart and a crowd eager for spectacle. Then inspiration struck. He raised his hands. Okay. You want to fight? Fine. But I warn you, I've been training. Sort of. Not well, but technically. The general lunged. The human yelped, sidestepped clumsily, and in pure panic grabbed the nearest thing, the ceremonial banner pole beside him. It came free with a snap, flaring to life with embedded circuitry. He swung it wildly. It hummed. The general parried easily, laughing, driving him back step by step. The crowd roared, expecting blood. And then it happened. The human tripped. Again. His foot caught on the edge of the platform, and he toppled forward. The banner pole whipped around, catching the general squarely in the legs. The towering warrior crashed to the ground with a metallic clang that echoed across the plaza. Silence. The human blinked, sprawled on his back, banner pole across his chest. Then he lifted his head and croaked, "See? Strategy. I weaponized clumsiness." The plaza erupted, not in fury, but in laughter. Genuine, unstoppable laughter. Even the fallen general, grimacing, could not suppress a chuckle as he staggered to his feet. The Empress raised her hand, her voice carrying like a clarion. Behold! He has bested a general, not with strength of arm, but with wit and foolishness. And yet, he has won. Tell me, my people, is this weakness? No, the crowd roared. Is this shame? No. Then let it be known. From this day forward, strength shall wear two faces in our empire, the blade, and the laugh. The duel, and the love. The plaza thundered with approval. The human lay there, stunned, as the Empress reached down and offered her hand. He took it, hauling himself upright. She leaned close, her voice low enough for only him to hear. You have done what even I could not. You made them laugh without fear. You have changed us. He smiled weakly. Changed, sure. But can we also change the bedding in my quarters? That plank is murder on my back. She laughed, genuine and unrestrained, and for the first time the sound was joined not just by a court, not just by generals, but by an entire people. Later, when the plaza had emptied and the banners dimmed, he sat beside her in the palace gardens, staring at the alien stars. He was bruised, sore, and exhausted beyond words, but he felt something he hadn't felt since he'd been dragged here, peace. You realize, he said, I'm still terrible at fighting. Yes, she said, her long ears catching the starlight. And that is why you are perfect. He chuckled, leaning back on the grass. Battle me or love me, huh? I think we found a third option, laugh with me. The Empress's smile was quiet, but it held the weight of galaxies. And under alien skies, in a palace that once echoed only with the sounds of steel and war, there was laughter.